Hi, I'm Brooke Medicine Eagle, here with Returning to Earth, Becoming Fully Human. It's a dynamic forum of wisdom keepers, elders, teachers, and healers focused on helping you create real, grounded, sustainable, and workable solutions to the current personal and planetary challenges that we're facing as a human family. And I'm really happy today to be able to connect across the airwaves clear to Peru to a very dear friend of mine and someone I admire for her person and personal self, as well as the work that she's done in the world. Penny Livingston-Stark is an internationally recognized prominent permaculture teacher, designer, and speaker. She holds an MS in eco-social regeneration and diplomas in permaculture design. She's also been studying the Hermetic tradition of alchemy and herbal medicine making in the EU, Indonesia, and the United States. She's taught permaculture design internationally, as well as working in land management, regenerative design, and the permaculture development field for 25 long and beautiful years. She has extensive experience in all phases of ecological sound design and construction, as well as the use of natural, non-toxic building materials. And so today we're going to have her share with us some of the basic principles relatively quickly of permaculture, and then go right into focusing on how you can create your living space in a good and perhaps less expensive way than would be our normal thing in the world today. So I'm going to turn it over to her. She's got a slideshow. And so thank you for taking this time out of what you're doing, which is very exciting.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's interesting being here in Peru because the people here have been building in this way, like they make their plasters and their earthen construction basically the same way I do. And I learned from the Welsh lineage that comes from Wales, and they've been doing it here forever, building their houses out of adobe with earthen plasters. And so I just feel really at home. And what I'm doing here in Peru is helping farmers transition to organic. And a lot of them, we have 45 farmers in the Sacred Valley now that are interested in shifting to organic. So they're very open and grateful, and it's a wonderful interface, cultural interface, because I learn a lot, they learn a lot, we have a great exchange. So yeah.
What's wonderful is I want to point out to people that many of us think that in these more, what do I want to say, primitive, let's say, but the more natural cultures that people are farming in a natural way. Well, what we didn't remember is the Green Revolution came in, and Monsanto and all of those folks came in and told these people they need their products, they need to buy new seed every year. So it's so exciting that this baseline of our growing is beginning to change. And I so honor you for this teaching and the fact that the farmers are so excited about it.
Yes. Oh my God, Brooke. You hit the nail on the head, so to speak, because that's exactly what happened here. So I didn't really know that much about the history of Peru. I'm still learning it, but there was an agricultural revolution here for 30 years, from the 1940, and it ended in 1960. And all over Peru, the haciendas from the colonizers, I guess, colonization, all of the areas, the regions were dominated by these haciendas, very much like in Mexico. And so 30 years they fought, the whole country fought in this agrarian reform. And then when they finally got the land taken away from the haciendas and given back to the people, it was 1970. And guess what? It was right after the Green Revolution, like you're talking about. So there was Monsanto, there were the chemical companies, ready to show people how to do it. And in the universities, also teaching them how to use chemicals. So a lot of these people, they don't have this indigenous background of land connection and growing organically, because they didn't really know how to farm. They were kind of worker bees for many, many, probably generations. And then they get the land, and then this is what they're taught. So I've been working here for 5 years, so this isn't an overnight thing, but we've been training a lot of the leadership and key people that are really good teachers, Peruvians that speak Quechua, they're Quechua people that are lit up about this. And they've been also, so it's been a team of us that's been doing this. And it's shifting, it's totally shifting. And so today we made the first compost pile. The people, I'm in the high jungle outside of Kiabamba, where we're now growing bananas and coconut and star fruit. But the people made their first compost pile ever. You know, I said, I'm going to teach you how to make real compost. And we took the stinky, they were just dumping food scraps in this place, and it was a stinky mess. And we layered it with everything, you know, the way you make compost with dry leaves and different things. And now they're going to get to watch it digest, and they notice that there's no stink anymore immediately after we made the pile. Anyway, we could just go off on this, but I think I'm going to dive into the topic at hand on natural building. And Brooke has asked me to also share some of the permaculture principles as I go along. And of course, Brooke, please pipe in when you have things you want to add or say. So why don't I go ahead and share my screen?
And while you're doing that, I'll just share with people that when I studied with Bill Mollison and he started showing us these principles, some of them seem so familiar to me because I was raised on a self-sufficient ranch homestead in the backcountry of Montana. So the reuse and recycle and all of those kind of things were so familiar. And then on top of that, Bill and all of his gang added so much that's so rich. So thank you for sharing this kind of thing with us.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I studied with Bill too. That's another thing we have in common. Uncle Bill, may he rest in peace.
Yes.
Okay, so so I'll say a little bit about my background.
Yes.
Among other things, I'm one of the founding members of what was called the Natural Building Colloquium, which people that work with straw bale, people that worked with cob, and all the different earthen and natural building techniques would gather, and we just go out in the back 40 and build stuff. And so I have a background in landscape design and construction, but then when I saw my first cob house, which is made of earth, it's the Welsh version of earthen building. Cob is a Welsh word that means lump or gob or rounded mass or loaf, you know. And so they're called cobs because you kind of make them with little balls of dirt. And I remember seeing one in Oregon at a place called Aprovecho, and I thought, oh my God, you can make houses out of dirt balls? This is amazing. And it just lit me up. And so I'm going to share some of my projects and some of my friends' projects throughout this. But we're not just going to talk about cob. We're going to talk about some other wonderful building materials that are cheap and resilient and this is a permaculture principle, that have low embodied energy, meaning that the energy that goes into producing and transporting and the waste is very low. It doesn't require a lot of energy, like mud doesn't require a lot of energy. Bamboo, straw does not require a lot of energy. And that's one of the permaculture principles. So it's kind of there's a whole group of us. Now it's called the Natural Building Network. And you can go to NBN, I think it's nbn.net is their website, but so the Natural Building Colloquium morphed into Natural Building Network. And so one of the people in this group is a man named David Eisenberg. He lives in Arizona, and he has DCAT, a Development Center for Appropriate Technology. And he's been working on greening the codes. And so this is his slide, a couple of his slides that he gave me. But so basically, you know, because a lot of what we're doing is technically illegal in a lot of states, and it doesn't match the building code. So when you start looking at building codes, you know, what they're looking at, you know, it's a noble thing. They don't want buildings to fall down on us. They want it to be safe. So they're looking at fire safety and structural integrity and access and light and ventilation and heat and water, wastewater, gas, energy efficiency. You know, they're looking at these things. It's a good thing. We're kind of glad that they're kind of trying to watch our backs. But what they're missing is the bigger picture. You know, the climate impact, like if everybody's being made to build out of wood, or if everybody's being made to build out of concrete or steel, even if everybody's being made to build out of straw bale, like nothing, if everybody in the world is building out of the same materials, it's not going to be sustainable or regenerative. So we're trying to find a plethora of options that people can build from. And as a result of this vision, I was unanimously appointed to the Building Appeals Council, the Building Appeals Board for the County of Marin in California. I served for 4 years, and we've changed the codes to allow some of these materials to be built in the unincorporated areas of Marin County. So if you're in any of you there, you can build with cob legally if you're not in a city, incorporated city, if you're in the jurisdiction of the county.
So one question I have for you and for people is, do you have copies of that kind of thing? Because one of the things that I feel like when someone accepts it in the lawful structure, then that's a baseline for someone else in another structure to lawful, structure to go, oh gosh, I guess that worked okay, and we can adopt what they adopted. So do you have that kind of resource? Or
you could contact the building department of Marin County, of the County of Marin. And just so you know, because this is being recorded, Bill Kelly's the chief building inspector, and he loves these materials. He loves cob. He loves earth and building. And he's a wonderful visionary, and he's the head of the building department in the Marin County. So you can contact him, and he'll send you whatever you're looking for.
California.
Yeah, Marin County, California. So, the bigger picture is looking at, like I said, the embodied energy, the climate impact, the pollution, toxicity of materials. The heat island effect actually has to do with when you're building cities and everybody and all the buildings have these reflective surfaces, you actually increase the temperature in places like Phoenix, Houston, Tucson, these hot, Los Angeles, these hot cities. There's all the transportation, there's the loss of agricultural land, loss of biodiversity, habitat, etc., and resource depletion. So there's so many things. Externalized cost to society means costs that aren't being counted. When you buy a product, you're not paying for the restoration of the rainforest. You're not paying for the restoration of the wetlands that have been damaged as a result of the product you're buying. Okay? So this is what we look at in our world. And so modern building codes enable us to design and build structures that are safe for their occupants, making it seem like we've eliminated or greatly reduced the risks associated with buildings. But what we've done is we just moved those risks in space and time away from the building site and into the future. And so this is why I'm passionate about natural building. And it's natural building because we look at how, like another permaculture principle is using on-site resources. So if you can use on-site resources as much as you can to create bioregionally appropriate building systems, then that's the goal. So different parts of the world have different kinds of building systems. So here's David's information and a quote that I learned from him called, "The way to subvert the dominant paradigm is to have more fun than they do and make sure they know it." Did you have anything, Brooke?
One of the things that I wanted to say is I feel like a theme in this whole summit, this whole series of talks is really about local. It's about what did Mother Earth give us right here? How can we use that? How can we not spend money and energy transporting it? We've got so much right where we are, and that's what's exciting. And I love that you're talking about that local principle.
Yeah, that's another principle, local focus. Exactly. So just saying, these are my friends. They got inspired by our garden, and we had a permaculture garden, and our friends that live in Bali in Indonesia said, "We want to do permaculture." And I said, "Wow, okay." And they sure did. So this is a 4-story bamboo building. And yeah, and the people, the family, it's the Hardy family, John and Cynthia Hardy, along with their kids, Oren and Alora Hardy, are fully on board. I trained Oren, lived with us for like 4 years on and off, coming and going. But Alora, his sister, designed this building. And we were actually, I had a permaculture class, we had about 30 people right here when the Agung, this big volcano, was going off and there was an earthquake. And this building barely just trembled. And we're like, so we ended up, everybody going back to the other side of the building. But yeah, we're out cantilevered out here. Didn't even phase the building. So I'm going to just kind of show you a little bit about bamboo. So this is tropicals. So it's totally appropriate in this particular setting. They have these big wide overhangs. And if it's really storming and windy, they have these giant curtains that they put down to keep the rain from coming in. But otherwise, most of the rain that they have is pretty much just horizontal rain. So it doesn't usually come into the buildings. And inside the buildings, they do have an enclosed space to keep their technology and anything that they have to protect from humidity. But it almost looks like something out of the Ewok village in Star Wars, if you ever saw that. And this is a bridge, a German designer. This is also there. It's we had 2 SUVs on this bridge. It's a 68-foot span. And So bamboo has the tensile strength of steel. And a bamboo pole it takes about 4 years. So the bamboo will shoot up, I don't know, 75, 80 feet in 3 months. In some tropical bamboos, you can almost hear it growing. And then they wait 4 years for it to get nice and strong. And then they harvest it. This is done by a Colombian architect, but just, to show the strength of bamboo. It's got this tensile strength of steel. This is the bridge being built. And that's it, getting with the cover on it. And that's us doing a little tour of the bridge. This is to keep children from falling off. Don't need much. This is also the same. This is a Sumatran house made of black bamboo. It was built in a month. And it's, the materials come from just around the surrounding forest. This is the Green School. And John Hardy started the Green School in Bali. Many of you may have heard of it. It's this incredible school. It's made completely of bamboo and some mud. There's some concrete for some certain things, like to hold the bamboo together, but by and large, it's mostly bamboo. They produce no waste. They grow all their food, all their power is from solar, and then they have a micro hydro turbine to produce their electricity. And they have this integrated curriculum. It's called Green School Bali. Check it out. It's the greenest project, I think, in the world. It's inside the main kind of assembly area. And you go, one day they might be doing capoeira, another day they might be doing marimba band, another day they might be doing Balinese dance. It's it's incredible curriculum. Yeah.
So Penny, I just wanted to let you know, and other people, that you're talking and the slide is coming up just a bit behind you. So, you're talking about the house and you're still on the bridge. So it's just a little slow. So people understand that it's just a little slow. She's coming from Peru. So
Okay.
Just be aware of that, and kind of just hang on, and she'll be a little ahead of you maybe, but it's pretty exciting to see this.
Okay, well, I'll shift and so see the desk. Can you see the desk?
Yes.
Okay, so this is bamboo that's been sliced. The 2 outer sides have been sliced, and then these are the nodes in the bamboo. And it just makes beautiful railings and, feet for desks and furniture and stuff. It's a fabulous design. Here's another bridge.
Oh my gosh.
I know Alora designed this. This is the entry to that 4-story building that we showed earlier. And so, can you see the people? It's like scaffolding. This is a big drop, and these people are walking around. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. And so this is like in the construction phase, and then this is it finished. And this is all bamboo roofing also. So, and then there's a single hinged door that they developed. So it spins. So you could actually, and so Alora, originally they were round, and Alora thought, why can't we make it as a teardrop? And so you can actually have, like, if you have different kind of art, you could switch it around, or maybe you want a shelf on one and a painting on the other side. You can change your walls around. Oops, I don't mean to do that. Oops.
Wow.
Okay, so then this is just some more interiors, all bamboo. So let me know if I'm going too fast.
There's the interior now. How beautiful.
Yeah, so here's, yeah, so that's the interior. And then now I'm looking at a basket that is woven around a refrigerator. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And so just the idea of these baskets were just to create visual, interest, and maybe blocking things that you might not want to look at, just to create more aesthetics.
Uh-huh.
Another, just a deck. I just like the lighting on that. So let me know as you can see it.
That deck is beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, here's another view. And okay.
There it is.
Oh my. Okay, so here's a teardrop, more teardrop doors. Okay.
Yes.
So now we're looking at what is it that we're leaving behind? And this is a remnant of an old structure from somewhere in Europe. And just what is it that we're leaving behind? So an average house in the United States has over 2,500 different chemicals in it, between glues and preservatives and plastic and laminates and all these, fire retardants, all these things, and what are we leaving behind? Like 1,000 years from now, what are people going to see? So this is a fairly common situation where people are, where people are kind of spread out all over the landscape, like suburbia, like suburban sprawl. And what we're looking at is, there's already like 9 billion people on the planet. Where are they going to go? And so what we're looking at also in terms of land use is clustering people together. And it kind of freaks people out a little bit because we talk about high density development. But what that means is that you're putting the houses and all the infrastructure closer together to allow more open space, whether it's for agriculture or for, natural habitat or for wetlands or whatever. We don't need to sprawl out and everybody has, 2 acres or something. We may have to increase the density and create more space for everybody to live together. It's just an idea.
And Penny, I think that this works so well. I've seen it in Europe where you cannot in many places have a suburb. They either build up or close together or in Pueblo style things. And I think that as we get wise and smart, just like the things you know how to do, we'll learn how to put beautiful vines between us and bamboo and pretty walls, or, we'll have a way to, because often people nowadays, I see them have, they might have 5 acres. They never are on it, but they keep everyone else off of it. And so if we could have a little smaller, beautiful, gorgeous places, but then these open places where everyone could get out in nature, we need that so much. So I think this is really excellent. And I think that's where we're going to have to go.
Yes, exactly. And, there's a really good example. It's a permaculture village called Village Homes in Davis, California. You can Google it. Anybody can Google it, Village Homes. They may even have a layout on their website, but that's what they basically did. It's a 270 home development. And they've clustered the homes in such a way that you're not looking in your neighbor's bathroom window. Everybody's got beautiful views, and they have a lot of open space for shared community gardens and different kind of gathering spaces and food forests and all these things. So Village Homes in Davis, California. Check it out. So this is in Bali also. This village is very, very remote. There's no cars going to there. There's no shops in this village. Everybody gets their needs met from either their home gardens or the surrounding forest, which is their grocery store, their hardware store, their pharmacy. And they've been doing this for thousands of years. And there's still people living in this way. They're starting to shift thanks to colonialization and global consumer culture, where you're starting to see, instead of bamboo, you might see cinder block and tin roofs and stuff. So I'm showing this slide. You may not know this, but this is actually located in Tucson, Arizona, where it gets to be maybe 100, 110 degrees in the summer. 120 degrees. And so that when we're talking about the heat island effect, can you imagine it's a really hot day and you walk into this parking lot? Can you feel your face just burning up from the albedo effect of the reflection, just because of the surface of the parking lot is increasing the temperature of this? Those are mesquite trees in the background. This is Tucson, or about maybe 30 minutes west of Tucson. And, I don't know what with these trees, like what's up with that? Like, are they trying to create shade? I don't know. And then the snow load in Tucson, the A-frames are designed for snow load. They're designed for mountains, the Alps, up in the Sierras, they're designed so that snow doesn't crunch your roof. I don't think they have a whole ton of snow in Tucson. Anyway, and the reason I'm bringing this up isn't just to make fun of this development, but it's also to recognize that I saw a statistic a while ago that's one American city, they were profiling Houston, Texas, one hot city consumes more energy just for cold air, just for air conditioning, than the gross domestic product of 46 African nations. And I think there's only 46 African nations, which is basically the whole continent of Africa. So one American city for air conditioning consumes more power and money and energy than basically the whole continent of Africa. And this is why, design is important. This is indulgent, in my opinion. I actually showed this to a group of people, and they said, somebody in the audience said, "Oh, we stayed there." So do you see the next slide where it's all shady? Not yet?
There we go.
Okay. So this is also in the desert, and this is in Santa Fe. It's a high desert, and it's a place called Sol y Sombra. And so you can see just by design, plants don't only just cool things by shading, but they evapotranspirate, which means that they sweat moisture as they're, when it gets really hot, especially, they're sweating moisture. So if you are living in a hot climate and you have a situation like this with this nice shade arbor, and you design it in relationship to a cool breeze coming through there, that's basically your biological swamp cooler. That's your biological air conditioning. And the even cooler thing about this is that all of these plants are getting watered by the sewage of the site. So, wait a minute for the slide to pop in.
I want to say something here for a second,
Yeah.
Penny. Like, I think when we look at Bali, we go, oh, well, Bali can do that because they've got all the stuff and they've got tropical this and that. But when we look back at our history, Native American people, primary peoples, lived on their own land and did fine for millennium. So I think it's good to not just think that you can live like that in Bali or somewhere, but as we wake up to the magic and abundance in the earth around us and live in smaller local communities, I think it's really important for people to get that we can do that more and more and more. You know, even our local agriculture, when we're buying in these wonderful farmers markets and that kind of thing, that's it. That's what we can do. And we can do it in different climates than just some sort of groovy tropical climate.
Oh yeah, no, we're gonna go to cold climate, like right now. This is Northern Europe. And these stoves, they're called masonry stoves. I mean, there's a lot of different names of these stoves, but they're really cool, and they can be made of earth or cob or tile or brick or stone or whatever kind of material that is really dense. That is what we call thermal mass, meaning that the heat from the stoves actually gets stored in the mass of the dense thermal mass of the stove. So these have to be made out of pretty dense materials. And the cool thing about them is that they require very little wood, like maybe a 5-gallon bucket per day in the winter of wood. And so what happens is that there's these baffles inside the stove that the heat doesn't just go straight up. It meanders back and forth and around and through these baffles to keep the heat inside the stove long enough for as much of it to get sucked into the mass of the stove as possible. So the heat you might be feeling from that stove might have been created 3 days prior, okay? So these stoves are designed for people who live in their homes. So if you go away for 2 weeks and you come back and you have a stove like this, it might take a couple of days for it to really heat up. But then once it's heated up, you have what we call a thermal battery, meaning the heat is being stored like a battery in the mass of the stove. So then you just kind of keep it going, add a little bit every day. And you've got, so when you're home all the time, these are the really great stoves for that. When you're actually living in.
One thing I learned that I didn't realize, and of course, if we've ever sat on a hot rock on a cool afternoon, we realized that thermal mass gains heat. And as soon as the temperature outside of that thermal mass goes below the temperature of the thermal mass extends heat into the environment. So if it gets a little cool in your house at night, then that's when it pulls that wonderful heat out into your home. I am crazy about these kind of stoves. I'm so wanting one in my place.
Yes, exactly. And, I wondered way back when maybe somebody realized that, like, hey, this rock it's freezing everywhere else, but this rock that's out in the sun is like all good, So this is a slide. I'm sorry, there's a little blooper in the type there, but biomimicry is another community of people that we are kindred spirits with, where they ask, how does nature do it? In fact, you can go, there's a website called asknature.org. I think it's both asknature.com and asknature.org. But what's cool about this is this is a termite mound. It's on the equator, sitting out in the middle of the sun. And these termites in their little space, it never gets hotter than about 65 degrees Fahrenheit because of the way they've designed it. They're using passive solar design all the way through. So can we be as smart as a termite? We got to learn from termites. And then this giant lily pad, a lot of structural engineers are looking at the giant lily pad to look at, these long spans, because you can hold this lily pad up and you can put all kinds of weight on there. And the way it's designed, could really be good for our ceilings and our roofs to hold any weight. Okay.
By the way, we're going to have, I believe I'm just getting a wonderful person from the biomimicry group to come and talk to us, and they have so much to offer us. So you may have already heard that, or stay tuned for it for sure.
Yeah, because I got to do a presentation in a conference, and a woman named Dana Baumgarten, she's a biologist for the Biomimicry Institute. Her and I kind of tag team. Like I forget who went first. One of us went first, and the other one came in later, and we could just totally riff off each other's stuff because it was so in alignment. This is in Brittany in France. It's an old, so remember the old slides before we had digital? Well, this is a little fuzzy, but this is a cordwood house. So it's made out of, basically you cut wood just like you cut firewood, and you let it dry, and then they layer it and then put lime, in this case it's lime, in between the cordwood things. You just stack it with lime, and there's a number of books out there on cordwood houses, and with this beautiful living roof. And then this is lime plaster. Lime is also very low in embodied energy. So unlike cement, lime is actually a living material.
So I don't know if people can see it, but let's say you have a log like this, you know, you put the plat or the mud around it, and then you got another log, and this is the width, outside, inside. So it's wide, you know, it's set like that, and you just keep building with the mud, right?
Yeah, we did it actually with cob, with mud in between, and not lime. I built a cordwood house that way.
Yeah.
So now do you see the Dolores Mission?
Yes.
So this is in San Francisco. This is a lime plaster. It's made of adobe. And it was built in 1776 by the missionaries. And you remember what happened in 1906 in San Francisco, the big famous earthquake? Well, this building did not fall down, largely thanks to these buttresses, a little design feature, helped stabilize earthen buildings. And it also, I learned very late in life, actually, that it was the fire that destroyed most of San Francisco, not the earthquake. And this building didn't burn either. And in fact, fire would make this building stronger, like a kiln.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so as California is burning, I have a friend named David Easton, who is kind of like the father of rammed earth in California. He brought it, I think, the technology from France or from Europe. And I called him because there was a big fire like a couple of years ago, this ginormous fire in Napa, a lot of homes burned down. I said, how did your homes handle the fire? And he said, well, the walls stood up great. The rammed earth walls were fine, but the foundation cracked. The concrete foundation cracked. So they had to tear the houses down because of the foundation. So I'm showing this because I'm in Peru and I went to Cusco. This is in Cusco, the high city in the high Andes. This was built by the Incas. And you can't even put a piece of paper through here, but look at now here's a foundation. You know, it's going to be there basically forever. Like if you want to really build a good foundation, learn from the Incas. And then this is down below, here's a Spanish foundation. This is Spain. The Europeans came, and this is what they did. And then here's a detail with stone foundations where on the corners, where you can kind of do this on the corners. But look at this extraordinary. This rock here is a very famous rock in Cusco because it has so many different angles and cuts, and it fits like a glove in as a foundation for this building. So if you want to, just thought I'd show you the best foundations probably in the world here.
So Penny, I have a question. Are we getting anywhere with something besides concrete? You know, concrete seems like such a base, literally, of so many things, but it's really not very workable in many different ways. I feel like it sucks energy, it's cold, it does a million things that I don't like very well. But are we getting anywhere with that? Is there anything new?
Yeah, it's funny. I pulled a lot of slides because I figured this is more eye candy show, but I did a workshop years ago with material called magnesium oxide, and the oceans are full of it. It has about the same amount of embodied energy as lime. Canada and China both have a lot on their land of magnesium oxide and or magnesium phosphate. Sorry, not magnesium oxide, it's magnesium phosphate.
Okay.
And we did some work with it. There's a organization called Cal Cement as a result of the workshop I organized. Has been doing a lot of work on trying to refine this technology and strengthen it. Cement is one of the highest embodied energy materials on the planet, and it accounts for about 11% of the CO2 that's in the air, 11%. And so, yeah, we want to, I mean, what we're saying right now is we're saying, you know, don't not use concrete or cement because, like, for example, water tanks, it's really good. There's not a lot of other alternatives except for maybe polyethylene plastic. And then for foundations, same thing. But we're saying use it for highest use. Like, don't use it for walls because there's other materials like earth that's superior for walls than concrete. So we don't have to use concrete for everything. Like, be selective on how you use it. But those are the things I know about that are kind of down the pipe. And then there's a bunch of different alternatives, like earth bag, different kind of foundations that people are doing. It's too technical to go into it now, but the short answer is yes. And the bit long answer is, or another short answer is it's not 100% there yet, but there's potential. So part of the Natural Building Colloquium, we have a really good friend named Sunray Kelly, and this is his yogurt. And he built with wood. He was a big woodworker, big dude, big guy. And he lives in Washington. You may know him, Brooke. Anyway, he's in east of Mount Vernon in Washington, a little ways. Cedro Woolley is where he lives. And this is, so you turn him on to cob, a woodworker, and you can see how these materials go together really well. So as we switch slides, this is a building I built. It's, could you see it? The dragon? Yeah, that's my oven. I built this as one of the, this was actually the first cob structure built in California. It's made of cob, and that's an oven. The dragon's an oven. So when we have a fire, it's coming out of the dragon's mouth. And I have hot water coils in the neck of the dragon to heat water. And then we have these chains going down, and it goes into a pond that's kind of located to the left of the slide. But this is all just earth and construction. Here's a greenhouse.
And once again, Penny, you're making those cobs are these little like bread loaves of a mix of mud and a few other things, right? And you just stack and stack and stack them, right?
Well, kind of, not exactly, sort of. You make them so you can kind of, then you have to toss them to where you're going to build. But it's mainly made of kind of clay, earth, sand, and straw. And then you take them and you kind of mush them. You mush them together. So you kind of smush them, and then you can smooth out the sides. This is a greenhouse that's also made of cob.
Oh,
here. And actually, this one is in Austria. You'll see it when it pops up. Did it pop up?
Yeah.
And that's actually more like soft dirt balls stacked, like you're talking about. You can see how they kind of formed. They were put together when they were wet. And this is probably lime plaster over it. But one of the things I really like is looking at this detail with the window where it's kind of shedding the water. I just think that's so cool. And you can do that kind of thing with earth and building. You can shape things however you want. This next slide, can you see it? Yeah.
There we go.
It really is lagging. This next slide is in Totnes in England, in Devon, and that's built in 1600. So it's a very old building, and Prince William of Orange organized his army in the yard of this house. But this is old traditional houses, is thatch and cob. Now, it used to be, this was a poor person's house. You know, they could build it themselves, to your point, Brooke, about cost. you can, you know, we build cob, we actually dance it. I'll show you some pictures as we go through this. You dance it into being with your feet, and with a community and with a few skills, you can build your house for virtually free. In fact, one of my first cob stories that I heard was a woman in Medford, Oregon, who she had some land. That was back when land was pretty cheap. You could get in that area, and her parents helped her get some land. She took a cob workshop. She went home, and her 3-year-old daughter built this house together. She had help with carpenter friends for the doors and windows and stuff, but she basically took her 3 months and she built a little cottage for herself. And then fast forward, she wrote an article later on where she was like sitting in her little cozy cob house with the fire going and candles lit, and her daughter sleeping in her bed, and she's spinning wool in her cottage. And she imagined, what would it be like if somebody was looking through the window into that scene? And she said she felt like she was living in a fairy tale. You know, it was sort of like a fairy tale, you know, and the good news is she has no mortgage. She has no mortgage. Her house costs virtually nothing. You can scrounge materials, you get some carpenter friends if you don't have carpentry skills, or learn some carpentry skills. It's very basic carpentry that requires for cob building. And take a cob workshop somewhere. They're all over. nbn.net, I'm sure, hosts a lot of different ones. And then you can learn how to do it yourself and become mortgage free. That was one of the goals of a lot of the cob building culture, is to not have to have a hefty mortgage. So your life is your own.
All right.
So then one of our people, one of our community, a woman named Janelle Kapoor, she lives in Asheville. She has Ash Village Institute. And she went to Thailand. And it turns out there's a group there called the Assembly of the Poor. And they got given all this land, but they couldn't harvest anything from the forest. So when they started learning earth and construction, they went nuts. I mean, they loved it. And I'm just going to show you, you know, this is the first building they built. It's a 2-story cob. Well, it's sort of cob. They kind of made, it was kind of halfway between adobe and cob, but it's essentially earth, sand, and straw in different forms. There's, you know, without getting too technical, because this isn't really a workshop, it's more inspiration. But you can people have evolved this technology into many, many different forms to create different kinds of advantages. Anyway, so this is one of them. And so these are some of her pictures that she took. You see the little girl in the mud, just having fun. It's for all ages. So I want to kind of flip through some of these, Brooke. So maybe help me when you, let me know when the slide shows up of the woman putting plaster on. Yeah, just raise your hand when you know. And one guy, his name was Jan, he became a builder, and he just went around building all kinds of houses for people all over the place, all in Thailand. They did not have a cultural history of building with mud. But they do have other kind of skills, like skills for weaving thatch, or working with bamboo, or working with grasses, you know, from the tropics. So they can merge their skills and their technologies from their culture in with these new technologies that they're learning, that they can have access to building materials that you know that they didn't know about 50 years ago or whatever. There's a book called Spectacular Vernacular by a woman named Carolee Palos. And it might be out of print now, but this is in North Africa. Do you see the beautiful lime paintings? Yeah, so this is in North Africa. And yeah, this is done by the women. And so the earth is earth and mud is mud, and it's being built all over the world. And that book, Spectacular Vernacular, just shows the beauty of some of the elegance of some of these buildings that are just made from corn stalks or earth or bamboo or cane, carrizo is in the Latin American word for this cane plant they also build with.
Mhm.
And then here, do you see the mosque with the
Yes.
little, yeah, those actually have a purpose. They're designed for scaffolding so that they can go up and reline the buildings. There's a famous church in New Mexico, in Abiquiu, New Mexico, where it's like a community event where every few years they come out and reline the church, the adobe church, and they wouldn't trade it for anything because it's part of their community building culture. So I also want to highlight some of Janelle's work. This is in somebody's backyard in Asheville, North Carolina. She's a so can you see that with the
Mhm.
yeah, and I'm just going to show another picture with the bench. Is it? Yeah, good. And so this is this bench. It's just built out of sand, or no, I'm sorry, straw and clay. And in a minute, you're going to see, or in a few seconds, you're going to see how many people can sit on that bench. It can handle weight. You can stand on that thing. It gets, when it dries and when it's soft, it's really mushy. And when it's hard, it is hard. So there's another technique that we use in our interior plasters called, it's called alice, coming from the Spanish word alisar, which means to polish. And we put mica in the plaster and it gets like little sparkles in there. And back in the day, you could get like a 5-gallon bucket of mica for like $10. Now they're selling it in little bags, but for expensive. But yeah, we used to just put mica in. It was so fun.
Well, I see, and I was going to say bottles.
Yeah, exactly. Do you see the bottles?
Yep.
No. So yeah, so I'm just going to show. This is now what's coming up next is this is in New Mexico, in Pewaukee, New Mexico. It's Adobe. It's a community center that the native people, the Pueblo people, built in that area. And when I was in Germany, we're gonna fly over to Germany right now, and I saw these 4-story buildings that are 1,000 years old. Can you see the date here? Can you see the German building?
Yep.
101002. That's the year that this building was built. And it's 4 stories. It's still being inhabited. And in this technique is called Lichtleinbau, which means light clay building. And it's 1,000-year-old technology or longer. And it's basically that you can use straw, you can use horse hair, goat hair, a lot of different things they use mixed with clay. Mm-hmm. And so now, can you see Robert Laporte? He's my teacher. Yes. So he's a timber framer, and he got really excited about this technique because it's non-toxic, it's breathable, moisture doesn't affect it. Timber frame is really good for earthquakes. I mean, it's just, and the energy of these buildings are beautiful. And he built he's a transcendental meditator, and he was in Fairfield, Iowa, which is a transcendental meditation community with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And he built a number of these buildings in Iowa, which gets quite cold. But you basically take straw and you take what's called a clay slip, or just clay and water. Clay dissolved, and you coat the straw in with the clay. Can you see him holding the? Yeah, good. Okay. And then you pack it into forms. You do need to have a wooden structure with this. Like, unlike cob, it's structural. You don't need any wood or any reinforcement with cob. With this, you do. But and then they use willow or bamboo, lateral every couple feet to keep it from racking. And then you can just, move the forms right away and just move them up, and build your building. So this is one of my buildings I was building. Can you see that? People standing on straw bales. So I want to go a little, and so here's another wall here. You'll see in a second. And you can see grass growing out of it. And actually what's cool is the grass grows out of it. And then when you plaster, it kind of helps root the plaster into the wall. It's really cool. It gives like texture to help the plaster stay. And then this, so Robert Laporte's website, I think it's, or if you Google Eco Nest, he lives in Ashland, Oregon now. And he and his wife, Paula, is an amazing architect. And she does the design and he builds. And this is all earthen plasters with different kind of pigments. That's a cockle oven. That's a masonry stove in there. So they have the baffles in the stove. And his houses are just beautiful. So if I was gonna build a house and hire someone, I'd hire him in a minute. I love this technology. So now we're gonna fly over to Yemen. Let me know if you see a 13-story Cobb building. And that's Yemen. And again, this is 13 stories and it's all made of earth. But again, you're seeing these buttresses. It's all about buttressing. It's wider at the base than it is at the top, and in all the different directions. So that's one of the tricks, is having these buttresses. So then now we're going to fly over to New Zealand, and you'll see a house that doesn't have any buttresses. They built everything completely wrong. But this house has withstood 2 major earthquakes. It's built on top of a fault. They were not listening to Swami Biyandananda when he said, when you find a fault, don't dwell on it. They did, but they went down through the basement everywhere. They didn't even find a crack. So anyway, so I'm just going to show some different eye candy. This is in Mexico. Now we're flying over to Mexico, to Tlaxcala, outside of the town of Puebla in Mexico, south of Mexico City. And my friends Alejandra and Paco Caballero, they built just the most awesome cob house. And this is, like, you'll see, they do adobe there already, but this is earth and plaster. There's no lime in this. It's all just earth, and then incorporating the bottles. So they're also incorporating it with their like a lot of the houses, you'll see these big adobe bricks with stones in between the layers. That's kind of the technique of that region. So they're incorporating new and old techniques together in that one. And I just think it's the best house ever. And they're so skilled in how they build. And the next slide you'll see is a composting toilet. Yeah. And that's all bottles, wine bottles and beer bottles, whatever. And that's all earth and plaster that they're doing. Now we're going to fly from there back to Portland, Oregon. And this was done by a woman named Lydia Dolman. It's a recycled store. So there's an organization in Portland called City Repair. You can check it out, cityrepair.org. And that's all earth, except for this part's stone, but this part's earth. And then the trees, and she did all this with a spoon. She made this, but it's just, all the different kind of pigments. So you can really be creative and really play around with earth and construction. I mean, I can't tell you, like, if you turn like a sculptor or an artist onto this, it's incredible. And so this is a shop that sells reused and repurposed doors, windows, architect, for people wanting to scrounge materials to build their own houses. And anybody can do it. I mean, you're just like, I've done a number of different workshops. Often we just build a bench because that's something we can do in a day or 2 days. And it's people just get lost in it. It's like almost in our genetic memory of, playing with the mud. And this is the next slide is another bench also in Portland at the People's Co-op. So if you go to Portland and go to the People's Co-op, this bench was built by a woman named Becky B. And what she did with the plaster, she got, can you see it?
Mhm.
And what she did is she got beeswax and linseed oil and a smooth stone, and she burnished the cob plaster with beeswax and linseed oil. And it's super durable. I mean, kids jump on it. It's much more durable than a lot of the other cob benches that are around. And that was the secret. You just massage this bench.
I just love all that you're showing us because it's showing us that we can be creative, we can be individual, we can be warm, we can be cool, we can use what's natural, we can be sustainable, but we can also be exquisitely beautiful. It's so exciting.
Sweet. Yeah, exactly. And this is another, now we just switch back to New Zealand just because we can. There's a man, but what he's showing is how you can blend all these different materials together. So you got cordwood, you got lime. This is probably earthen construction. You got bottles, you got wood, you've got all this stone. You've got all these different materials from nature that you can combine in concert with each other, and they all behave really well with each other. So now we're going to fly over to Turkey. I love the Turks. Oh my God. I've done 2 or 3 natural building workshops there and a few permaculture workshops there. I've been there a number of times. This is in a farm about 2.5 hours from Istanbul in a little town called Bademich. And what we did is we put a tarp down and created a pit. And this is, we call it moose. And so we just put a bunch of dirt and water and everybody just like smushes around in it and mixes it with their feet. And then, you gotta get it out of your system. Like, it's not only kids that have to do this, but adults too. They just gotta let them have their mud fight and get it out of their system. And then I want to share another technique that is another one of my favorite techniques ever, ever, ever. And it's called, I call it paja reque. And paja means straw in Spanish. And reque doesn't really mean anything. It just sounds good. But paja reque, and what's cool, so this is in Turkey and it's in wheat country, so we can actually get nice long strands of wheat. And we mix it in that mousse, in this pit, in this mud pit. And we just take these straw, there's sort of one tech word is called corbelling, but so they take that and then you can have these thin sticks. It could be bamboo, it could be willow, it could be hazel, it could be any wood at all. And then you weave, I'll show you some other pictures, but you weave this corbel, it's called, through these sticks. And the cool thing about this is once it's dry, it's, remember that bench where it goes out kind of horizontal? This is doing a vertical. This building is bomb proof. Assuming it's attached to the foundation and the ceiling, the roof correctly, it is bomb proof. I would challenge anybody to even put a drill hole in there. So if you need to put any utilities or anything through that, wall, sleeves at all, do it while it's wet, because you're not going to be able to do it when it's dry. It's super duper strong. And so when I actually brought Janelle, the woman I was telling you about in Thailand from Ashland. I took her with me to, we built 3 structures in, I think, 7 days with about 70 people. And we did a bunch of different kind of techniques. So this one down below, this is that light straw clay that we were showing Robert Laporte tamping the straw. This is that paja reque. And then once you weave it, you can kind of smooth it when you smush it, and you just smooth it with your hand, and it can get nice and smooth, like you can see on the side of the slide. And we did a bunch of other techniques there as well. And we built a seed house and a composting toilet building. And then there was a French guy building a straw bale wall in another place. That's Janelle. And so we forgot to put windows in. We forgot, like when I was specifying all the materials, I forgot to think about windows. And so they had some glass plates that they donated to the projects. And so, you know, you can see how you can just put the plate in there and kind of build around it and then smooth it out, and you have a nice little window to let some light in.
Amazing.
Yeah. And you know, like I said, it is wheat country. So I like to give the people who are working on the project some creative license to play around with the sculpty aspect of cob and earthen building, because you can create all kinds of amazing, beautiful sculptures. And the artists and people come out during these workshops. And so they're fashioning wheat as the theme for this particular project. So you can, and we're going to kind of flip through some of these so you can see, you know, some of the projects. So then I came back another time to this same farm, and they had this bread oven that we started working on to make it beautiful. It was just piles of, look kind of like, do you see the oven?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just kind of like stone, all kind of, and concrete and brick kind of stacked. So we covered it with clay. And then they were actually baking in it while we were working on it. But so this is what we transformed it into. And it was a struggle to keep the goats from jumping around on it. But so this is the tree of life pattern that we created. And then eventually, I don't have pictures. I need to dig them out. I don't know how to find them. They're way back on my Facebook page. But they ended up putting a roof over it, and they created a whole outdoor kitchen around this whole thing, all made of cob. So they really completed the project in a really good way. And so I just want to show a bunch of different images of bottle art with cob and relief work. And, you know, it's just people, a lot of these people are not considered, you know, professional artists, but they just can create amazing things in this process. So do you now see the vertical rectangle? Yeah. So here's some ones I got off the internet just to show the versatility of how you can also have, you know, a wooden house and do cob embellishments with it. So even if you have a conventional house, you can go in and add cob embellishments. And yeah, I don't know if you can hear the chacharaca birds that are outside. I was calling them the reggaeton birds because they like doing this rhythm. But just to show, these are earthen plasters. And, you know, some of you might know this plaster as, can you see the beautiful plaster? Yeah. Some of you might know this as a faux finish. Well, in French, it means fake. And so I think the word faux derived because you try to achieve this look with paint. You know, they do it with paint, and it's like an artistry to create this faux finish. Well, this is real faux or faux real. You know, this is clay and different colored clays kind of merged together to create these beautiful, beautiful walls.
Wow.
One of the other elders in our community is a guy named Fleming Abrahamson. So now we're flying it over to Denmark, and this is cold climate. So this is straw bale, And he's a master thatcher. He was teaching us thatch. He'd come over from Denmark, and you can, it's very, very cold there. So they've got the glass on the south side, and then they've got just thatch, serious thatch going down the north side to keep these houses nice and toasty warm. And they probably have a cockle oven or a masonry stove inside.
Mm-hmm.
So we're at a crossroads. This is actually a real place. Cemetery Lane, Power Plant Road, you see that?
Yep.
And we have to start thinking outside of the box. Just saying, you know? And, you know, when we look at how we choose our building materials, we have a sphere of kind of responsive, like a sphere of concern, you know, that we're concerned. We want our buildings to be safe and for the people living in that building. But then you also, what we need to do is take a step back and look at the sphere of consequence. You know, like this is a very common landscape in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
If you're living in Wisconsin or Texas, you don't know about this. But those of us who live Northern California, Oregon, Washington, we see this. And so there's a sphere of consequence, and there's also a sphere of responsibility. Because we have neighbors. We have a lot of non-human neighbors. And what our decisions that we make around anything we do, whether it's building materials or how we grow our food or how we develop land, affects them. You know, it affects their well-being because this is their home too.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and so when we're, you know, going and clear cutting, we're taking away their homes and maybe their nests and their food sources and their nesting sources, you know, and half of us don't even know that, you know, and they're there, you know, they're our neighbors. And so when we start in permaculture, when we start making decisions about what we're doing, we don't just think about ourselves, we think about our neighbors, our human and our non-human neighbors, and their lives are literally in our hands. They're literally in our hands. And so we also have to remember and honor the elders. And we also have to remember and honor the future generations. And so we want to make sure that what this little child is being exposed to is clean, fair, and safe for her, you know, and for all of our children. Because, you know, it's the future generations that make our lives, give our lives meaning. And we also have to remember to just have fun, get into it. And also remember the sacred, you know, remember that, you know, once upon a time, building was a sacred activity. Architecture was a sacred activity. The churches, all of the cathedrals in Europe, Ayurvedic architecture, Chinese architecture, like all over the world, that was done with the golden mean ratio. It was actually a sacred act to create a space. Yeah. And so we're trying to get back to that awareness again with our buildings. And so I have a really favorite quote by Terry Tempest Williams. The eyes of the future are looking back at us and are praying for us to see beyond our time. And so that's what we're doing right now. Like, you know, you think about every decision where we got the information we got from the Haudenosaunee, the wisdom from the Six Nations Confederacy, or is it 7 nations? There's actually technically 7 nations, but anyway, the Haudenosaunee people, for every decision we make, we think about how it's going to affect 7 generations into the future. And Thomas Jefferson learned that from them. Ben Franklin spoke fluent Mohawk. I don't know if you, this isn't necessarily written in the history books, but we are the seventh generation of Thomas Jefferson. So it's time to start thinking about the 7 generations from now when we make our decisions. So thank you.
Well, Penny, this has been so inspirational, so beautiful, so fun. I'm so honored to have had you. And I think you have a little gift for people, right?
Yeah, I'm going to figure out with you guys how to get it to you. But I have a food as medicine module. It's a video of me. It's a kind of slideshow, kind of like what you're looking at now. But it's a video, food as medicine video. And I will work with Brooke's technician, and you'll tell people how to get it. But I'll get it to you so you can get it to everybody watching. So.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you. I feel like this has been deeply spiritual in the way that I love spirit, which is that we honor all of life and the sacredness of all of life. And the way we do our daily lives are that spiritual practice. So I'm going to say goodbye now. And thank you so very, very much for this. And remember, all of you, that you can purchase this series so that you can look at this again and again and share it with your friends, because part of what we're doing here is connecting and sharing and getting the information out there as quickly as we can, so you'll get information about the possibility of buying the series, and I know you'll love to have it. So Penny, bless you. Thank you for your work. Love to the farmers and to Peru, and we will hopefully hear from you again the next time we do this series.
Okay. Well, thank you, Brooke.
Bye-bye then.
Ciao. Ciao for now.